And also we have with us Dr. Kelly Good, who's immediate past president here for the Virginia Pharmacists Association, who is serving as co-chair for the Virginia Vaccine Work Group. And she'll be helping to moderate some of the questions. As I mentioned before, this is a Zoom meeting, so you do have the capability to take yourself on and off mute. We will ask while the presentations are going on that if you do have questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat, and we will try to address those at the end of the meeting. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Whewell.
Stephanie, you might be on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm so happy to have such good participation and interest as we move forward with COVID vaccination. And I want to acknowledge that, just my, the amount of pride that I have in the pharmacies and how, just throughout this whole pandemic, the amount of partnership and help that has been provided from the pharmacy sector, and we appreciate that partnership with public health as well as with many of the organizations, including Virginia Pharmacists Association and others. So I want to start with just giving you a brief overview of the vaccination planning and where we are now. And I just want to make sure you can see my slides.
We can see them.
Okay, great. Okay, so first I want to talk a little bit about where we've been and what we've learned and where we're going. So we've learned two things through research that have changed our response. First, a significant number of people can get infected, not have symptoms, and spread the virus to others. This silent spread makes it impossible to contain the virus through early diagnosis and contact tracing alone. And it's important to layer these interventions to decrease transmissions. The second, on a more positive side, face masks are protective, and community masking can help slow the spread. As the case counts in Virginia and across the United States rise, the implementation of a successful COVID vaccination program becomes even more crucial. Vaccine planning, distribution, and administration are the next steps in the overall efforts to protect Virginians, reduce the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, and hopefully help restore some normalcy to our lives and our country. As you'll see from this, this slide, it's important to recognize that even with an effective vaccine to protect our excuse me, we will need to continue to use these other strategies for quite some time. The Virginia Department of Health continues its readiness efforts in coordination with its public and private provider partners, and there's still information to be that's unknown, and we can expect there's going to be bumps in the road as we roll out a vaccination program. However, Virginia Department of Health public experts have extensive experience with vaccine distribution, administration, and emergency response planning, and we will work to quickly overcome obstacles. Okay, so this slide, the point in the cartoon over to the left is to talk a little bit about, we understand that vaccines have been misunderstood by some from the beginning, and this cartoon is from 1802, and it implied that with the introduction of the smallpox vaccine, that the vaccination caused some people to become part cow. As we started the planning, which really started back well in the early parts of the summer, we knew that in order to help us prepare and communicate about the COVID vaccine, we recognized the need to have an advisory work group. This advisory work group comprises of over 100 members from a variety of backgrounds, and we've been meeting since September 4th. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Kelly Good help co-chair the advisory work group. Within the advisory work group, there are 4 sub-work groups or subcommittees: the vaccine safety and efficacy, partnerships, barriers to vaccination, and communications and messaging. It's important for us to note that the safety and efficacy is a group of independently, a group of clinicians, both infectious disease, clinical pharmacists, internists within the hospital, and epidemiologists that are reviewing the data and studies about the vaccine. And they also provide a updated summary of all of the clinical trials of all the different vaccines, and that's reported on our website. Additionally, any meeting agenda minutes and even the recordings of these meetings are available on our website. As I'm sure you have seen this picture, it's one that that's often used in these presentations when we talk about vaccine, but it's important to talk about the vaccine life cycle. There's been a lot of concern by some when we started talking about COVID vaccine and the development that there's been shortcuts. This graphic helps depict the life cycle, and it shows the initial states of vaccine development ending with phase 4. And it's important to note after phase 4 that vaccines continue to be monitored once they're widely used in the population. COVID vaccines are going through this exact same process. And the reason for the ability to speed this process along is, one, we're at a point where we become more efficient at making vaccines. And then secondly, the financial capital covered by the US government allows us to reach this achievement sooner than we have before. The federal government provided capital to allow vaccines to be manufactured in mass quantities while the studies are being conducted. This doesn't happen normally in vaccine development, so the risk is on the financial side and not on the safety side. If a vaccine is manufactured in advance but found to be either not safe or ineffective, then it would be destroyed. So as I mentioned, we've been working since the summer to develop specific plans for COVID vaccine. Vaccine will be provided in a phased approach, as you can see on this slide. The supply is expected to increase over several months. Specific groups will be identified to receive the vaccine in the first 2 phases. ACIP has already announced, as you likely know, that healthcare personnel and long-term residents are the first 2 groups to be vaccinated. And for those specific groups, we plan to work through health systems, local health departments, and pharmacy chains and pharmacies to accomplish this. Vaccination will occur at clinics set up specifically for the targeted groups, which is called the closed points of dispensing. The vaccine is purchased with US tax dollars, and so it's given at no cost to Americans, but there is the ability to bill and be reimbursed for administration fees. Let's see if there's anything. I think that's it. As it becomes more readily available, then we'll move into the general population, and then anyone who does receive this vaccine is required to, providers are required to report this information in the Virginia Immunization Information System, which is Virginia's immunization registry. So despite some people's hesitancy about the vaccine, the vast majority of Americans and Virginians want the vaccine. The demand is, again, expected to be higher and initially outpace the supply. So the CDC released their plans or their ethical principles and process in which they will decide any allocation. Decisions will be made based on the information about the vaccine's characteristics, the safety and efficacy in older adults, for example. So that's the scientific data. And then the second is the feasibility of implementation, the storage and handling requirements. And then finally, they'll use 4 ethical principles, which they've laid out. 1 being maximize benefit and minimize harms. 2, promote justice by intentionally ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to be vaccinated. And remove those barriers that disproportionately affect groups that have been economically or socially marginalized. 3, mitigate health inequities. And 4, promote transparency. So due to the limited vaccines available at first, there will be special considerations on who should initially get the vaccine. The vaccines will be given to people in a fair, ethical, and transparent way based on recommendations by the CDC. So as you'll see from this flow diagram, starting at the top, then the FDA must first approve the vaccine, and then the CDC is allocating the vaccine to the states based on a population basis. Virginia will then adopt the ACIP recommendations. Over to the left-hand side of the flow chart, you'll see that if there's sufficient amount of vaccine to cover an entire population, it will be directly shipped to the designated vaccinators to administer. If there's not, the vaccine will, the vaccine unit under the Unified Command will draft a protocol, elicit comments from the Vaccine Advisory Work Group, and provide both of these to the Virginia's COVID-19 Unified Command's Virginia Disaster Medical Advisory Committee. This group was established back in the spring to make decisions about scarce resources, and it includes representatives from public health, healthcare, ethicists, as well as representatives from the Health Equity Work Group. The VDMAC will provide their recommendations to Unified Command leadership. So that's what happened with this phase 1A. What happened on phase 1A is that on December 1st, the CDC Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices made recommendation for the initial priority group. And then the VDMAC, or Virginia Disaster Medical Advisory Committee, and the Unified Command voted on December 4th to adopt the ACIP recommendations in Virginia for healthcare personnel and long-term care residents. I want to go through this a little bit more on the flow chart. On the right-hand side, you'll see that the 2 ways in which the federal partnership and the CDC will provide vaccine, due to the fact that in 1A that long-term care residents were prioritized. Then the left-hand side of this the allocation to pharmacies was activated. And then this other priority groups is the federal partnership that CDC has created, which likely will be enacted as more populations are identified or prioritized for vaccine. So it's important to note that the ACIP vote is not a formal recommendation, but further a clarification for priority groups. And then this further provides some information on healthcare personnel and long-term care facility residents. Healthcare personnel are defined as paid and unpaid persons serving in healthcare systems who have the potential for direct or indirect exposure or infectious materials. And as you can see, there's been a significant amount of cases and deaths from COVID among healthcare personnel. Early protection of healthcare personnel is critical to preserve capacity to care for patients with COVID. And then finally, long-term care residents, because of their age, high rates of underlying medical conditions, and congregate living setting, have been at an extremely high risk for infection and severe illness from COVID-19. We think that the likely sequence of priority groups beyond 1A will be 1B, essential workers, exact definitions to be determined, and then 1C, adults with high risk medical conditions and adults greater than 65 years of age. So information from Operation Warp Speed as of December 3rd is that Virginia should receive about 480,000 doses of vaccine by the end of December. VDH estimates that there is approximately 500,000 healthcare personnel and long-term care facility residents in Virginia. So that 480,000 doses is almost enough to vaccinate the entire population of these two priority groups by the end of December. It is to note that this 480,000 doses that is expected is from both Moderna and Pfizer. And this is obviously assuming that that Moderna is authorized by the FDA. The first shipment of the doses already occurred this week, and that was 72,150 doses, which were shipped directly to geographically diverse health systems throughout the state, and those that had ultra cold storage capacity. We expect that the subsequent weekly shipments will start after this initial shipment, and it'll start next week, with it going to the pharmacies with the federal partnership. That'll start in the next couple of weeks, and then also to healthcare systems as well as public health. And I just want to say that it's important that we note that the actual amount of vaccine, I have to put this caveat on in here, is a moving target, and it's certainly dependent on when and how quickly vaccination doses are manufactured. So just to give an overview of where we are with vaccines, there are at least 6 vaccines that that the U.S. government has invested in, and the first 2 being Pfizer and Moderna, which have initiated the EUA. Pfizer's was approved obviously last week, and Moderna's I've not seen it today what the FDA advisory panel, if they've issued any vote yet. We expect that the next one will be AstraZeneca. So between the Pfizer and the Moderna, the Pfizer, it has a minimum order of 970 doses. As you can see, the storage requirements are quite restrictive, and it comes as 2 doses with 21 days apart. It does have to be reconstituted with a diluent. And then the Moderna is a minimum order of 100 doses stored at regular freezer temperature, with the ability to store it at refrigerator temperature for up to 30 days. And it's 2 doses, 28 days apart. Both of these vaccines work through mRNA. So just to go over that briefly, the mRNA vaccines work by using the body's own cell to produce the antigen. The mRNA codes for the SARS-CoV-2 spike protein. So this protein is encapsulated into this lipid nanoparticle, and then it's injected intramuscular. And then antibodies are developed as part of the immune response system. The mRNA it does not enter into the cell's nucleus, and the spike protein is made of ribosomes in the cytoplasm. The body then breaks down that mRNA in its lipid particle within a matter of hours. Okay, so the timeline, I just wanted to briefly go over the timeline and provide this information to you. To note, the FDA advisory panel has convened today to vote on the recommendation for Moderna. ACIP will meet tomorrow to review the scientific data, and then as early as late tomorrow or Saturday, we expect that potentially an FDA EUA may be authorized, and from there, ACIP will meet again to define any clinical considerations with the MMWR being published as early as Sunday or Monday. And this is right in line with what happened with Pfizer last week. The other thing to note is that we do expect when CDC ACIP meets that they will further clarify and define the allocation of phase 1B and 1C. Okay. So this is my last slide, but I wanted to just certainly draw you to the to our website. It's got quite a bit of information for providers on there. So I think it would be relevant, a lot of education, and I hope that this overview was helpful, and I appreciate you bearing with me because I know that a lot of this information is somewhat redundant for a lot of you, but I feel like it just kind of helps set the stage for where we're going next. So I'm going to pull up those slides, hopefully, where I can talk to you a little bit more about the statewide partnership. And then I really want to stop talking so I can get the opportunity to hear from you all and answer a lot of your questions. Can you see this slide set, Christina?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so the idea here is that there is, as I mentioned in the flow diagram with the prioritization and the process in which the Virginia will utilize to distribute vaccine, as there's the federal partnership for pharmacies, which is completely separate. So there's the CDC federal partnership for long-term care facilities, and then there's also the federal partnership for even more pharmacies for this for when it's available to more of the population. In addition to that, and some states have already done this, but Virginia is looking at a way in which we can collaborate with pharmacies to support the needs within phase 1. So we know that there are that pharmacies have the capability and processes in place to support mass vaccination efforts, and that pharmacies are able to stand up these vaccination clinics. We also know that there's going to be a limited amount of doses available, and there's going to be small. Right now, we know in phase 1A, there are a lot of non-health system providers that are small and would not be able to receive the minimum amount of vaccine that would be shipped with Moderna specifically. There is complex cold chain management with either one of these manufactured products. And so the question or the area of opportunity is, how can we leverage our partnership with pharmacies to help supplement the needs within the public health side? So this diagram here describes how that would occur. The local health department. So first, on our end, we've conversed with medical associations and pharmacy associations talking about this need. We've identified from the health districts which local health districts would be interested in partnering with pharmacies. And then we further went out to the pharmacies, to you all, to identify which pharmacies would be interested in possibly helping to provide this support and coordinating with the local health districts. From there, the health districts have been working hard on their micro planning, identifying areas of need. And then we want to pursue an agreement with these pharmacies, which we would then further provide to the health districts, which they could partner with the pharmacies to help coordinate and administer COVID vaccine. So the pharmacies, their role is your role is to confirm the interest, as you did with the provider intent. If you haven't, then please go to the website. It's got all the information. If you once fully registered with as a provider for COVID vaccine, then we ask that you complete the agreement, And then we will send your information over to the health districts. The health districts will help identify the need in phase 1. You would order the vaccine and coordinate in a clinic. And then you would be required for the vaccination clinic. So the vaccinating, the storing of the vaccine, all of the logistical parts, reporting it to VIS, and then billing the administration fee. On the other end, the location of need, they would be responsible for showing up to the mass vaccination clinic, being vaccinated, and then returning for that second dose. This further defines the roles and responsibilities. So on our end, on the vaccination unit, we're trying to get the agreements and get the partnership established, and then we'll provide that to the local health districts, who will reach out to the pharmacies and coordinate on what the identified needs are. The pharmacies will then take over all of the responsibility of the vaccination, and then the location of needs again will receive the vaccine. And so I just wanted to go over a little bit of the assumptions. One is that that the pharmacies have the ability to do this, that the locations of need are interested in pharmacies having that. I think we're pretty comfortable there, and that the pharmacies will schedule and track the second doses as able, and that the assumption here is also that the vaccine that will be utilized is the Moderna vaccine. So we are not planning on shipping any of the Pfizer or the ultra cold vaccine, which is why in the survey, the initial survey, you were asked if you had either freezer or refrigerator storage ability. And then we just need to work together on the MOA. So with that, I think I've done plenty of talking, and I want to open it up for questions.
Dr. Rewell, we're going to turn it over to Kelly Good to kind of moderate some of the questions that we have coming in the chat. And also just a reminder, if you do have questions, feel free to enter them in the chat box and we will get to them. So go ahead.
Thanks, Christina. So Stephanie, the first question that we have, are all insurance companies required to pay for the administration fee?
Yeah, so yes, I don't know if yes, I think so. I don't know if it is mandated that there should be the ability to charge insurance companies. I'm not sure if it's mandated that the insurance companies have to pay for it. I think they've all acknowledged. I don't know that there's been an unwillingness to, but if someone is underinsured or uninsured, there is the ability to bill HHS. So from what we've been talking to insurance companies, and a lot of them are trying to make sure that they got it set up. I have some really good news. I think Anthem is good to go. So, and I think that all of them are following suit. And when I say Anthem, both on the pharmacy and medical side. So, so it appears that that does not seem to be a barrier at this point, with them not wanting to pay that administration fee.
And just to add on a little bit to that, we've been working on this as well, along with BDH. And my colleague in North Dakota sent me a memo that went out from their insurance commissioner, directing all the insurance companies to reimburse for administration fees. We are in contact with the SCC and have made this request to them that our health commissioner, our insurance commissioner, send out a similar memo to all the insurers in the state, encouraging them to cover in and out of network charges. So keep everyone posted on that, but just know that we are aware that that is a barrier for some of our members. And so we're still working on that.
Thanks, Christina. So the next question, Stephanie, was just the requirements to be a compliant vaccine provider for COVID. So the question is, they said that yes, they recognize OSHA, CPR, they're recognizing that the immunization certificate and the CEs, is there anything else that would be required from a pharmacist to be able to administer COVID-19 vaccine for training?
I'm sorry, I keep going on mute. I'm sorry. No, there's the requirements are what has been laid out by the PrEP Act. I would encourage the Board of Pharmacy has done a good job of summarizing those requirements, but there's no additional requirements beyond those for pharmacists.
The next question, I have a couple questions that sort of center around this, and that's the timeline for pharmacies to expect to receive vaccine, independent pharmacies that are not part of that federal long-term care requirement. And I guess there's also maybe some confusion about whether vaccines coming from direct from the manufacturer, the wholesaler, or directly from VDH.
Right. So with this partnership, and so this is outside of, I can't speak to when pharmacies will receive it outside of the long-term care partnership and outside of the statewide partnership. But if pharmacies were to sign this agreement, then we would start providing this over to our local health districts who have already started planning this week. So and they would reach out once the local health district decides that, that the pharmacy and the local health district agree on how and what capacity and what populations to target or what clinics would be provided, then vaccine could be distributed as early as, I would say, the beginning of, or be received as early as the beginning of January, likely that either the week of December 28th or the week of January 6th. And that would come directly from, for Moderna, it would come from McKesson. If outside of that, for the federal partnership or just in general, I think it largely depends on when the CDC activates that federal partnership. I don't know if they will, what they had described before was kind of in that phase 2, once it's a little bit more available for the general population.
Thanks, Stephanie. And then just a couple sort of, I guess, questions about supply, and wanted to know if VDH is supplying thermometers, I guess, for the refrigerators, freezers.
No, the data loggers, that is a requirement for the providers to purchase or have continuous monitoring and data loggers. So that would not be supplied. VDH is there's no payment or supply from VDH. The pharmacies would be able to bill for the administration fees.
And then another question, and I'm not sure if this is based on the billing or just an understanding of this partnership, and that is the site of administration assumed to be at the pharmacies offering to assist with this? So that may be a billing question, or it may be just not understanding, I guess, the close, the pods and sort of the whole.
Yeah, so the close point of dispensing really is that it'll be offered to a targeted audience, and there's many different mechanisms and how that could happen, and it would happen based on the communication between the pharmacy and the local health district. So from there, whether it be that it's I think it would be more closed door type setting, but there are ways in which this could happen in the pharmacy via an electronic voucher or something like that. But I think it would likely be more closed door type setting. And the actual billing and storage of the vaccine would likely happen from it being shipped directly to the pharmacy and stored there. So they would bring the vaccine on site and then leave with the vaccine if there was some remaining.
Thanks, Stephanie. And then the next question is, is there training and access requirements for the immunization information platform for pharmacists to log in? And then also, as a second part to that question, will the state be using a registration platform to pre-screen and schedule the immunizations?
So the state, we are using the CDC system called VAMS, and that's what we are utilizing for the to schedule the immunizations. There is training and available for the immunization registry, as well as we have people who will happily, we have at least 4 or 5 coordinators throughout the state to help talk through any issues or questions about the registry.
And then next, Stephanie, is a little bit about patients who can receive it. So the first is, any screening questionnaire required? And then will the vaccine be available for any patient priority or their priorities for age or chronic conditions?
Yeah, so that will happen, but right now it's for the healthcare workers and the long-term care facilities. In this phase 1, as it continues to expand, the health districts will provide specifics on which priority groups are able to receive the vaccine, as well as any screening that would be required.
Okay, and then the next question is, does the 1A priority include pharmacists, dentists, and physician offices, or just health system personnel?
It includes all healthcare providers that would be in direct contact with COVID positive patients or infectious material. So pharmacists, dentists, MD office says yes, all of that.
So the next question is, again, around sort of logistics and the partnership. So whether the pharmacies have to establish partnerships with the local health department or not, and I guess just walk them through again that it's coming from VDH.
Yeah. So there's, at this point, there's 2 different ways in which the vaccine would be arriving. One is through the health systems, and then 2 is through the public health side, the local health district. So the local health districts are doing a lot of planning on their end to make sure that all of the people that have been identified in the priority population are able to receive this vaccine. So they're working very closely with the health systems in their community. So yes, the pharmacies would also work very closely with the health districts in order to ensure that they can however, I think it's going to be very different among the different health districts, but the point is the pharmacy and the health district would be working very closely with the pharmacy, just as they are with the health system in their community, to identify how they can help with administering the priority population that has been set at that time. We recognize it's going to expand. I'm giving you what currently is the priority population, but this will expand as we go into January and further into the year.
And then Stephanie, I think that you've answered this, that comment, but question is, how will the state be vetting and identify patients who fall into the phase 1 category?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, the clinics will be closed points of dispensing. So the way in which they will identify the patients is through these closed clinics based on who falls in that category, based on these, priority populations. I do think I understand, the question being that as it gets larger and there's more people prioritized, is how will you ensure that someone is for sure in that priority population. And so I would say that that's on the health districts are planning for that, and it'll likely be the way in which they'll do that is through these closed points of dispensing.
Thanks, Stephanie. And then the next question is about temperatures in the immunization information system or self-monitoring through the own system. So I guess so you don't put temperatures in the immunization.
No, there's no requirement to report the temperatures of the equipment, but it's required to be continuous monitoring.
And then the next question is just, is VDH aware if there's any CARES Act or other funding that might be available for independent community pharmacists for help with access to software, staff, scheduling, and connecting to the immunization information system?
I am not aware of any additional funding opportunities through the state funding, but I'm not aware of any.
Okay, I'm not either. And then the next is just an announcement that expert panel just voted to give Moderna emergency approval.
Great.
So Moderna vaccine has gotten an EUA. That's a comment. Great. And then the next one is just wanting to know if a pharmacist could give Pfizer vaccine this week or next week or before the Moderna is available.
How would a pharmacist, so this is if they could receive the
I guess they're looking to see if they can get it now. Can they get the Pfizer vaccine now? Can a pharmacy, I guess pharmacist,
yeah.
whether that's to get to receive it or to administer. So the question is not clear. So we'll ask them to clarify if they're looking to get the vaccine themselves or to administer it. So we'll wait.
In order to actually be one of the persons to receive the vaccine, then it would be through, there's at this point for healthcare providers, it's either the health system or the non-health system. And so all of the non-health system providers need to work with their local health district. The local health districts are trying to identify those providers. And then they will be coordinating that. And so if the question is then how would the pharmacy receive the vaccine, then that would be again how the health district is going to be the full point of coordination of who would receive it and how they would receive it, and then who would be helping to administer it.
It was to get himself, so that you answered that. And then another question about being registered as an independent lab, but you don't have to be a lab for vaccines.
I'm surprised we haven't had more questions about the agreement. We distributed about 50 agreements on Wednesday. We've received about 12 or so in. I'm not sure if Christy or Kelm can give numbers, but I'm just happy to talk about anybody who is, has any questions specific to the agreement. I think some of the common questions that we received have been, this doesn't bind any pharmacy to saying that they, that they're fully in, that they fully have to receive, provide all of these clinics. It just says that they'll be willing. And then at any point in time, if a pharmacy decides that they don't want to coordinate anymore for the phase one, and there's the option to continue to coordinate with a partner with the state, even at the point when with the federal partnership is turned on, but understanding that may not be what's interested, or the pharmacy's interest, then we are just asking for the pharmacy to notify us.
So Stephanie, I just have a positive comment that your answers have clarified questions and they'll be signing and returning their MOU.
Thank you. I mean, I will say that by far and large, our health districts are very interested in partnering with the pharmacies in their community. So, I really do see this being an opportunity for both. And we recognize that the pharmacies have this ability to do this. So we want to work closely with you all.
And then there's just a comment, Stephanie, that about that mRNA doesn't fit the definition of a vaccine, and that payer compensation for vaccines and drugs are different and more closely aligns with a drug. Do we think that in the future that they'll be aligned more as a drug or a vaccine, and how they would become in the future? And is there, who would pharmacy talk with about that?
Stephanie, get out your mirror ball over here.
Yeah, well, no, I think that, right now what the on the reimbursement side and everything that I've seen is that they're going to treat this 100% like a vaccine. So the reimbursement side, I don't have a lot of questions about that. I think that that Mr. Butler is more of an expert than I am about all of those differences, and I don't know in the future how it would be treated. But right now, I think that that certainly the reimbursement, I would expect it to be the same, no matter what the mechanism of action of the different vaccines, and that it will be reimbursed as a vaccine. And the reimbursement rates have been provided. The other thing that I should have highlighted, but and I don't know, Christina, if you've sent that out to any members, and we can certainly send it out again to those of you that are interested. But the NCPDP did put together a document on pharmacy billing and helped clarify how that billing will occur through the point of sale systems. And I did see a question about it can be billed both it could be billed as a medical claim or a pharmacy claim. So I will reiterate that that we've been having conversations pretty regularly with DMAS and Virginia Association of Health Plans. So I think that door's been opened, and we have been very open with the fact that we want to partner with pharmacies initially up front. So we've been really trying to focus on trying to make sure that these mechanisms for billing for pharmacies are prioritized within all of the different health plans. And so I think that, not all of them are there yet. It's very promising that to hear back that they're, first of all, monitoring it so closely, and that at least Anthem has it set up for both the medical and pharmacy side. They have also expressed an interest to know anybody who is going to partner with the state, so that way, if they're not currently enrolled in the plan, that they can prioritize getting them and the providers enrolled in the plan. So I think that's also promising, and we hope to be able to work very closely with the health plans to get that to happen.
And Stephanie, this is Kelly. I just want to make a comment about that for the pharmacist on this call, VDH has done a yeoman's effort in really helping us with that. And it's nice to have somebody besides pharmacy singing that song and helping us. And so they're really working very hard on behalf of pharmacy to do this. And so we really appreciate that, Stephanie, you and your crew working hard to help get that done. I have another question about if they filled out agreement, when would they expect to hear from their local health department?
Yeah, so if you've filled out the intent form, then the next step will be the CDC agreement. I will say that we've had over 3,000 intent forms filled out by providers, and that we're up to close to 400 CDC provider agreements. That next step does take some time. We have to review the data and get everybody into the CDC VTrack system, but that is occurring pretty quickly. I'm very proud of those numbers because it's happening fairly rapidly. So if you filled out the intent form and not heard from anybody from VDH, you should hear soon. And we have we're trying to prioritize those providers who are ready. So once you have done that process, then the other part of the arm is then these agreements. And so I can tell you that our local health districts would love to have a list tomorrow of which pharmacies have signed these agreements. So as soon as we can get those agreements signed, we will send them on over to the health districts. I can't promise when they'll reach out, but I think there's a good majority of them that would reach out very shortly as soon as they got that information.
And I just want to add, Stephanie, a lot of our members that are on this line, we talked yesterday with VDH about some of your concerns about seeking the MRC volunteers to kind of help triage some of the stuff, and VDH is looking into that. So we'll be sending out more information once we hear about getting some volunteers partnered up with you.
Yeah, I mean, we've been very fortunate. Our MRC group is working really hard to get a lot of volunteers added quickly and identified so that and I think that we can certainly work to help with that side of things, of making sure that we can partner any MRC volunteers that on the admin side to help. Yep. Thank you.
So the chat box has slowed down. Does anybody have any questions that they want to get in while we still have a couple of minutes? So Stephanie, if you had to guess, if Moderna does get approved on Saturday, when do you anticipate getting the first shipment?
Next week.
Christmas comes early, right?
We've already allocated the Moderna numbers, so yeah, it'll ship next week. We know.
Are
that.
you allowed to say what the first allotment's going to be?
Am I allowed versus can I remember those numbers? There's a lot of numbers floating in my head. The first allotment of the Pfizer was 72,000, and the Moderna is higher than that. So over 100,000. And then we will also be allotting more Pfizer vaccine for next week. And right now, I do want to emphasize that the Pfizer vaccine is either being allotted for the pharmacies with the long-term care facility that are helping with on the federal partnership for the long-term care facilities, and then also for the hospitals. So the Moderna is then being reserved for the public health, the local health districts, and would be what would be distributed to the pharmacies. We have received, I guess that one of the things with the Pfizer vaccine is that the pharmacy or that the health systems have discovered that there's a little bit of overfill there. And initially the CDC had said that that you should only utilize the 5 doses, but now they've come back and said if you can get 6 doses that you can. FDA and CDC have agreed that you can utilize that 6th dose. So we've heard from quite a few pharmacies that are saying that they've been able, I mean, from hospitals that have said that they have been able to get 6 doses out of that.
Yeah, that's great. So we just had a question come in. Do we know when training will be available for storage and handling specifically for COVID vaccine for staff?
Yeah, it's available. So storage and handling for Pfizer is available. And the other thing that I can offer is that we expect that there will be way more training opportunities for Moderna, just like it was for Pfizer. And by having our contacts with our associations, as well as any contacts that we've built in from these agreements or so on, we'll certainly send that out. We received notification on, I don't know, Saturday morning that there was one, Saturday evening and Sunday, and then Monday. So we'll pass that on. I think the other thing that I can offer is we're trying to get everything that we can posted to our website. So we will certainly put that out there. And we are having a expert panel for pharmacists to talk through this with epidemiologists and infectious disease and clinical pharmacists. And that is occurring on December 29th. But yes, that storage and handling training has already been built out for Pfizer, and CDC is really working on a lot of their toolkits. We've also put a lot of fact sheets on our website and had those converted to different translated to different languages and so on.
Yeah, and if you're a VPHA member, we've been pushing a lot of that out, and we'll continue, especially the one on December 29th. We'll be reminding you after the holidays just to make sure that you take some time and get on that, because that is one that's specifically geared towards pharmacists. And then we have a question about how do you screen to validate if a patient meets the closed clinic criteria?
So I would I'm going to have to defer that to the health district, so they'll define what screening criteria would be required. And then this is a good question about pharmacy technicians being included in phase 1A. So it's healthcare providers, and it's not limited to specifically to a traditional term provider. So people that are working paid or unpaid, who are working healthcare workers who could be exposed to COVID positive patients or infectious materials. So pharmacy technicians would be part of that criteria.
Well, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for today. I'd like to remind everyone that we will be hosting the same session again tomorrow at 10 a.m. And that information was sent out, the Zoom link. I'd like to thank Dr. Whewell and the whole VDH team for getting on here today and providing us with this opportunity to get these questions answered, and also to Dr. Good for taking the time to be a part of this as well. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at info@virginiapharmacist.org. We will also be posting this recording on our website, and so we'll let everyone know when that's available. So we hope you have a great evening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Have a great evening.